Hello everyone and welcome. Yes, my name is Jetfire and welcome back to an episode of my top 5. And actually this is my 2-year anniversary of this channel. This is, just over 2 years since I started it, and I'm really glad that I have. Really glad that you've all tuned in and stuck around with me and watching the channel grow, the subscriber count grow, doing over 100 videos. It's been wonderful. It really has been brilliant, and yeah, no end in sight. Let's keep it going. So to cast your minds back, way back when at the very beginning of this channel, my first ever video was my top 5 underrated Transformers characters. And I thought, to play on that kind of theme of a homage back to the first video, I thought I'd do my top 5 overrated Transformers characters. Now, okay, bit of a pessimistic video if you like, and I'm sure I'm going to be picking some characters that you are all going to love. I'm sure I'm going to be offending somebody by doing this, but hey, can't make an omelette without breaking eggs. So let's get into it.
Top 5.
Number 5, Scourge. Now, okay, Scourge is going to be a favourite for a lot of people in many different ways, but in my view, he's very much just a henchman. He's supposed to be the third in command and very much part of this trio of Unicron's warriors that would go around. You wouldn't see Galvatron without Cyclonus, without Scourge. But really, if you cast your minds back to the cartoon, his most memorable moments, at least I think, were when he was operating out on his own and outside of his comfort zone. So when Starscream would take over his body in Ghost in the Machine, or in the Rebirth miniseries where he was effectively vying for command with Cyclonus. They weren't really second and third command. So when you look at that, he's fine, but generally he's just someone who falls in line. He's a bit bland in that sense. The biggest problem, actually probably isn't of his doing, is with the sweeps themselves. Now, of course, they are mass replicating, mass producing. They don't have any denotion other than maybe some numbers at the end of their names, but they all look like Scourge. And the trouble is, when you start having multiples of the same character, it dilutes from the original and it doesn't look so good. How can you take Scourge as a threat, as a target master, as a third in command, when there's Sweep 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, who look exactly the same, transform exactly the same, and for all intents and purposes probably are exactly the same. In the comics, maybe, in Marvel Comics, with the time travelling aspect, Scourge is a little bit more badass, but other than that, he's just a bit forgettable for, okay, he was meant to be a henchman, nothing more than that, but to be third in command, you don't really take him seriously. So even though he has a popular place in fandom, in the Transformer community, I don't know if he deserves to be there. Number 4, Springer. Yes, okay, this is going to be the one that upsets a lot of people, and yes, we've done it already. Springer is not my favourite character, even though you can probably just see him over my shoulder there. The problem I've got, I can put aside the jerkiness, the fact he's a bit of a dick, the fact he's, this boisterous and egotistical character, maybe. The problem I have as well is the fact that he's a triple changer and we just don't talk about it. It's the fact he has 3 modes and we never see the race car mode, and it's actually not a bad race car. But why, when you look at all the other triple changers, the fact that they're triple changers is heavily played on. You see Blitzwing transforming to both his modes and blowing up stuff in a moment's notice. Astro Train very much hints in the name. Even Octane would transform into a couple of things. Broadside is notoriously afraid of both his modes, so it's heavily implied. Springer is one of the few Autobot triple changers, and he just transforms into a helicopter. Now, okay, yeah, it's a cool helicopter, but it just feels like unrealised potential. The other issue I got with Springer, aside many, is the fact of his choice of weapons. Now he has a sword. Now, I could almost do a whole video of weapons in Transformers, but that's for another day. The problem I've got with Springer's sword is it's made of steel. Now, okay, a few other people I can pick on this, but at least Megatron and Optimus had energon weapons. Optimus had an energon axe that you believe would cut through things like a lightsaber would. So, particularly in Transformers the movie, okay, Wreck-Gar has like a steel axe, so I'm going to put Wreck-Gar in the same category. But Springer comes along with a steel sword. But these Transformers are made out of a form of advanced metal that doesn't rust and lasts for millennia. You think a steel sword is going to cut through anything like that? It just seems a bit of a useless choice of weaponry when other more laser-fied technology is available. So again, yes, I do hate on Springer a fair bit in this channel. I'm sure a few of you have noticed that. But aside the obvious, I think there's a few plot holes there with the character. Number 3, Deathsaurus. Okay, now we're going to go into a Japanese continuity here with Headmasters, and this was a new line of Transformers villainry, and there had to be new credible threats. So for the Autobots, you had Starsaber, who was going to be the new hero and the new leader. Yes, that is an acceptable way of spelling it, by the way, but you also have the Decepticon version that would ultimately take Megatron or Galvatron's place, and this is Deathsaurus. Now, the name is absolutely fine. The robot mode is absolutely fine. The colour scheme is absolutely fine. The choice of alt mode is iffy. It's a giant chicken. Now, okay, is this supposed to be a bit Godzilla-like? Is it maybe a bit Griffin-like, a mythical creature, a creature of terror? Not supposed to look like a chicken that you would probably find on the shelf in Sainsbury's. No, but it's a funny choice, isn't it, when you go from Megatron that was a gun. Okay, they wanted to come away from that, but you could have Megatron turning into a tank when Generation 2 would come around, Galvatron being a turret of some description. Other modes were available, and yet we have this giant blue walking chicken that just looks like he's come out the freezer a bit too early. It loses its credibility. Now, okay, Starsaber turns into this oversized, stupid jet that you can't really tell if it flies or crawls. But it was a funny choice of alt mode. Again, the character's quite credible. There's things to that character, but when you just look at the alt mode and think, with a name like Deathsaurus, I don't know, chicken feed doesn't quite roll off the tongue quite so well. Number 2, MENASOR. Yep, it's going to upset a few people as well. I generally love combiners, who doesn't? But the problem I've got with MENASOR is he's very much surpassed in many ways. So the Stunticons as a team are really good, their alt modes are really good, but they form MENASOR. I think I've just got the cartoon mode in my mind. He's very bland, he's very grey, and it's a bit of a shame when the individual bots of the Stunticons have like an interesting colour palette and their own skills and designs that very much gets lost in alt mode. You see this very square bodied with just cars sticking on arms and then facing the other way back on the legs. And then we got the steel sword side of it, and then whether he's got some hypersonic powers that sometimes gets played on that no other combiner does. And there's also this thing about whether MENASOR is technically the smallest combiner. Now, for my money, all combiners are the same height. I don't care if there's a team of 6, a team of 5. Predaking is allegedly the biggest, MENASOR the smallest, or whatever. They're all the same in my eyes. When you put all of that together, MENASOR, I think, should be better than what he is. I kind of feel there should be a better representation of it. When you look at the IDW version of MENASOR, the more modernised version, there's a bit more of a stylised version and very much a jaggedness to the character that I think is a good update to the Generation 1 mould and the design of it. I think otherwise he just looks very just grey and dull and forgettable. And what was Megatron's first combiner that he perfected outright, yes, I'm skipping over the Constructicons there, I kind of feel the character needs better justice. And number 1, Jetfire. So Jetfire goes from being this very much a class of his own, commander class, this huge bot that's found in the ice, has a backstory with Starscream, which is really good. Has a lot of depth to a character who just turns up, not to mention all the legality issues with Skyfire, Jetfire, Robotech and all classes from before. When it finally gets settled down and the introduction, particularly in the cartoon, it's really good. And this is an aerial threat that the Autobots desperately needed. And it's just not really played upon beyond that. We don't see him in a movie, and allegedly he gets blown out of the sky in Dark Awakening. But that aside, he crops up almost everywhere. You think he was in the Fall of Cybertron video games. He's been in the revised War for Cybertron series on Netflix and a toy line with a very good toy mould as well. He does crop up quite a lot, yet for someone who's supposed to be quite a high-ranking officer, doesn't really go past Season 1 all that much. He does have involvements in Season 1, but for someone of that level, you kind of want to see him as much as you would a Grimlock, I think. You know, someone who is that physically empowering. Megatron should be quaking his boots every week in the cartoon, going right up to the end of the series for having a bot that big standing on his own, not a combiner, in the Autobot forces, and we just don't see enough of him. Now, for him to appear in comics and media beyond that, and the name to be used quite often, yeah, it's a bit of a waste. I will say this is just aimed at Jetfire Generation 1. The actual Unicron Trilogy Jetfire was quite a good one, albeit very Australian sounding, mate. And there we go, that is my top 5 overrated Transformers characters, which I'm sure some of you will disagree with. But hey, that's the beauty about choices. Please put your comments below as to whether you agree, disagree, have a top 5 of your own, or anyone else I might have missed off. Leave a note in a comment below, I'd love to know what yours are. But thanks for watching, thanks for sticking with me for 2 years through this channel. I'm sure there'll be more years to come. And as always, I will see you on the next one.